Manoj, thanks for taking the time out. Before we go and address the strategy, there were some very interesting takeaways from the communications segment. Now, for me, what's actually stood out is that while the allocation of 5G in a lot of these key markets is still staggered, you guys are still looking up when it comes to the communications sector overall in general. Can you tell us a little more about that, and to what extent can this be attributed to your pipeline at this point?
Morning, Ram. So I think, as you said, I think we just did an analyst meet, and from a perspective of the overall meet, I think we talked about evolution of our 3-4-3 strategy in terms of trying to expand the definition of what we would call infrastructure next, which is about not only just about the network but also about the other elements of infrastructure, including cloud and IoT. And we talked about the software transformation and how platforms are driving growth, and the future is probably everything as a service. And then finally about business outcomes and business rules, and how they are defining some of the changes which our customers are going through. And lastly, and maybe most important, is about customer experience. So coming to your question on communications, I think if we look at the market, I think, as you know, the sector was in a bit of a mode where a lot of customers were looking to optimize. But we are seeing some of the changes come through now in terms of elements of discretionary spend. You mentioned 5G. I think a lot of our customers have definitive plans around 5G. But people are still waiting for 2 or 3 things. One is obviously the market to evolve in terms of the device ecosystem, in terms of evaluating positioning with the customers in terms of the various return ratios. So as we see it, I think that is something which is still evolving. We have mentioned in the past that FY21 is when we see probably an acceleration coming in that area. And I think outside 5G, I think if we look at modernization pre-5G, modernization of some elements of the IT estate in some of our telcos, across the globe we are seeing signs that people are willing to invest. Digital as a theme, I think, is something which is far-reaching. If I look at overall digital growth for us also, I think we are growing in excess of 30%. So based on all of this, I think given our previous years, I think this year is looking better. And that's something which we had communicated to the analysts even on Monday when we did the analyst day here in Pune.
Manoj, I also want to understand how different are things looking when it comes to you catering for clients who are looking to run the business against change the business over the span of the last 12 months?
So if you look at the funnel, and as we look at it, right, so more and more of our funnel is going towards there are 3 elements which we divide it into, right? Run, change, and grow. And run is, of course, about the existing estate and how we can drive optimization and efficiencies through AI and automation. But change and grow is about transformation. It's about creating new revenue streams for customers and helping them, approach the customer better, delivering a better customer experience. So if I look at the swing in the funnel, more and more of our funnel is now oriented towards change and grow. And that's something which is a change which has happened over the last potentially 12 to 18 months. And that's a trend which we are seeing across not only communications but also enterprise. So that's the qualitative shift which we are seeing in the funnel composition.
Okay, Manoj, also, there was just a tad bit of a concern through reading of reports that you had elaborated on the near-term concerns of operating margins. Is this largely because of, Tech Mahindra putting in more expenditure with respect to the deals that they have? And if that is the case, how soon can you start expecting an expansion in operating margins going ahead?
So you're right, and the context to that is, I think if you look at our deal conversions and deal wins, I think in the recent quarters they've been fairly strong. In fact, quarter two was a record quarter in terms of deal wins, both in enterprise and comms. And many of these deals, near term, of course, there is a lot of investment from our side in terms of whether you want to call it transition, whether you want to call it knowledge transfer, whether you want to call it creating a stable framework for the future as we embark on these large deals. So typically we have seen that those kind of costs come through in the first 2-3 quarters of the deal. So one of the things we also mentioned is that as we look into next year, I think we would be in a position to try and recoup some of those investments as many of these would come into steady state. And that's what we have articulated, and that's a potential margin lever going into FY21 for us. So on that front, I think that will be a positive impact on margins in FY21.
Okay. All right, Manoj, we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for taking the time out and speaking to us here on BloombergQuint about the prospects of Tech Mahindra.